Welcome back, everyone. I've been getting a lot of requests lately for me to go back to playing Campaign Trail or the new Campaign Trail. Those are games, basically, it's a browser based game where you take on the role of being a presidential candidate in a historical race or in a hypothetical race from history. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. I've done a bunch of these in the past, and I'm going to add this one to that playlist, and I'll link that playlist down in the description so you can see all the other elections that we've done over time. But we're going to take on the 1876 election today. It's one of the most contentious in history. It's one of the ones that people talk about the most that may have been decided by fraud. In fact, so much so that the guy who ended up ultimately winning, the governor of Ohio, Rutherford B. Hayes, was known as Rutherfraud because of how it all went down. And we'll talk about that as we get into this. But I'm going to attempt to win the election outright without any contentious issues. And so just to kind of start things off here, I want to take a look at historically, this is how this election went down as far as the electoral votes go. So this is post-Civil War. This is a time when pretty much the surest way to get elected president of the United States was to be a Republican Civil War veteran from Ohio. Almost every president that was elected in the 50 years after the American Civil War fell into that category. You have Ulysses S. Grant, born in Ohio, obviously a general and a Republican. Following him, you have Rutherford B. Hayes, a Civil War general, Ohio, Republican. After Hayes, you have James Garfield, Civil War general, Republican from Ohio. After Garfield, you get Benjamin Harrison, Civil War general, Republican, born in Ohio, was elected from Indiana where he was serving. But then you have a little bit of a break there, and then you get William McKinley, Civil War veteran, Republican from Ohio. So you get the point. It's a good way to get elected. So Rutherford B. Hayes is, I think, 3 times the governor of Ohio. He's running for president in 1876. And you can see here how the Democrat-Republican breakdown goes because of the South versus North thing. And this had been going this way for a while, but Louisiana, Florida, and South Carolina end up all going for Hayes. And that was, all 3 of those states were kind of debated about who really won them. And ultimately, a commission decided all the states from all 3 would go to Hayes. But he did lose in the North, Indiana and New York. New York was Samuel Tilden, his opponent's home state. Connecticut and New Jersey, West Virginia. So I'm looking at this, and obviously if I don't take for granted that I'm going to take Louisiana, Florida, and South Carolina and those 19 electoral votes with them, I can make that up with, say, Indiana and West Virginia, or Indiana and Connecticut, or Indiana and New Jersey. So that's kind of what my focus is going to be, is hold all the states in the North that he won. And if I can't get any of these 3, try to pick off Indiana and then either New Jersey or Connecticut. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So first things first, we need to choose a running mate. Historically, William Wheeler was the pick. He's from New York, which is Hayes' opponent's home state. But we do have another option here, which is Frederick Frelinghuysen. And he's from New Jersey, which we already talked about being one of the states that we were thinking about getting. This would obviously be a more radical pick, and that's the choice that people make is, do we pick the safe pick? Do we solidify our base? Do we try to appeal to new voters? Is there a particular region of the country that we think they're going to help with? So let's look at Wheeler first, who is the historic pick from New York. He's a member of the House of Representatives. He's from a populous swing state. He may help bring geographic balance to the ticket, giving Hayes an edge in a state that is leaning towards its very own Governor Tilden. Winning New York would practically seal an electoral college win for Hayes. That's absolutely right. There's no path to victory for Tilden without New York. So I don't feel like that's a smart play for us, though, to try and poach New York from him. I think there's plenty of other paths for us instead of putting all our eggs in that basket. Although his emphasis for compromise on Reconstruction may hurt his candidacy in some northern states, perhaps it will give Hayes a boost in others. He's a safer pick and will not likely offend any major faction of the party. See, this is the deal, is you're dealing with factions. You're dealing with parties that, this is not a time when the parties are very polar opposites. There are factions within each party. The Republicans have liberals and moderates. What you call the the radical Republicans, the likes of during the Civil War, you had guys like Seward and Salmon Chase, whereas Lincoln was more of a moderate. You have that kind of same thing happening here. But by this point in history, the mood in the North is turning against Reconstruction. If you're not familiar with Reconstruction, just the 20-second summary is: in the aftermath of the American Civil War, the Union Army occupies the South. They're trying to reconstruct the South. The South has to kind of come out of the American Civil War and not only needs to rebuild in terms of its economy, but also has to reform, because now it's not going to be slave-based. And you're trying to deal with a lot of what we now call Jim Crow laws, which are racist laws that keep freed black Southerners from having the same rights that whites do. So that whole thing's going on, and the aftermath of the 1876 election is the end of Reconstruction. So, but let's take a look at Frelinghuysen. He's from New Jersey. He's an incumbent senator. He is a radical Republican, so he's more an extreme member of the party. He's not a moderate. He's not somebody who's going to play more to bringing the factions together. But he's also allied himself with the stalwarts. The stalwarts this is something that you're going to hear a lot about a few years later with James Garfield, because there's a big push in the Republican Party, especially against kind of the spoils system and rewarding your cronies with cushy jobs. And there's a lot of that, especially in New York. So as a senator from New Jersey, he will certainly give Hayes a much-needed boost in a northern state that appears to favor Tilden, although his status as a radical Republican will harm his image in the three southern states considered in play: Louisiana, Florida, and South Carolina. I think I'm going to shake things up. I'm going to choose him because, like we said, I'm going to kind of sacrifice Louisiana, Florida, South Carolina for trying to win a couple of those northern states like Indiana and New Jersey. So it is winner take all, which is the way that things work. You actually can choose difficulty and a question count. This is interesting. I didn't realize that this must be new things that they've added yet. Might be worth going back and replaying some of the others with that in mind. We're going to do we'll do 25. That's what we've always done. I think we'll go with that. Okay, so let's start out by looking at the electoral map as we go into the election. You can see that a lot of the southern states are very solidly in favor of Tilden. Really, they're not even in play. The white Southerners are never going to vote for a Republican, especially one that put a radical on the ticket as his running mate. Illinois super close. Indiana is slightly favoring Tilden. Ohio super close. Pennsylvania is tied. New York, you can kind of see. I mean, it's an uphill battle for Hayes in this election. He was not the favorite going into the convention. That was James Blaine, who's from Maine. But let's take a look at the main issues here. We're dealing with Reconstruction, tariffs, which is the main source of income for the federal government at this time, economics, Civil War. Obviously, that's still, the Civil War's over, but people still have loyalties from the Civil War. And then the idea of corruption. How important is corruption to these people? So that's that. We start out with this one. A divided and uneasy Republican National Convention has nominated you over Maine Congressman James G. Blaine on the 7th ballot. It is imperative that your acceptance letter address all the concerns of the convention, the party, and the nation. What will you most emphasize during your acceptance letter? Notice it's not an acceptance speech. Men did not typically attend the conventions if they were a candidate. They let their people do that for them and fight this on their behalf. This is a time in history when people didn't actively campaign the way that they do today. But it's starting to change toward that. So thank the convention and accept the nomination while discussing my record as governor and a congressman. Address the money issue with a firm stance on our obligation to repay our debts. An empathetic talk of civil service reform. This is what I was talking about earlier. This will play well in certain places, but not as much in other. This is the deal with corruption issue. This is one of the things that Garfield's going to be very strong on 4 years later. We'll forever wipe out the distinction between North and South in our common country by deposing of any traitors that seek to assume the powers of government. So that'll isolate us from the South more, but obviously we're not getting votes in the South anyway. Although the convention in Cincinnati makes no mention of term restrictions, I will press my pledge to serve a single term. This is something he did pledge to do, and he did not run for re-election in 1880. So I think we're going to go with that. We'll stick with what he did historically on this one. This is an interesting way to undercut Tilden's support with reform-minded voters. So these things, they don't automatically impact. It usually takes a couple of turns before you see much of a change with this. But as things stand, right now the electoral vote estimate is Tilden 206 to Hayes 163. So we've obviously got to shift some things to make that happen. Nomination of Tilden has shifted focus towards reform and civil service. Your acceptance letter also must discuss the Southern issues as well. What will your letter discuss on this topic? Remember, popular opinion in the North swinging against Reconstruction. In fact, let's take a look at the states we want to win. New Jersey is slightly supporting Reconstruction. Connecticut slightly supporting Reconstruction. Indiana slightly, or it's mixed. Ohio's mixed. Pennsylvania's mixed. So it's not a strong issue for us, Reconstruction. I feel like there are other issues where, like economics, which all of these states we want to win, for the most part, are liberal. Connecticut's conservative, but most of the others, New Jersey leans conservative too. Corruption is important in some, but unimportant in others. So there's really no strong viewpoint in all of those states. Make a plea to former Southern Whigs? No, I'm not going to do that. This would be a straight end to Reconstruction if we went there. I don't think that's the route either. Press our sole role as the defender of both white and colored people in the South. Welfare of the South is the welfare of the population, of all of their populace. First necessity is an intelligent, honest administration of the government which will protect all classes of citizens and all their political and private rights. We'll go with that one. I don't know how that's going to play, but we'll see. Reconstruction is not as popular as it once was. Exactly. Florida, I mean, you can see... Okay, that Pennsylvania's shifted slightly our way. Indiana's shifting more. I think so far so good. So as you can see, as we're getting more into this, one of the things I really like about this game is it gives us an opportunity to take kind of a deep dive into the issues that were important to the country at the time, the things that were being debated. You know, we're in a presidential election year right now in the United States, and we know there are particular issues that people are concerned about. The economy is always a concern, but there are always those things that are particular to that time period. Reconstruction being one, civil service reform, tariffs. These are things that the country was concerned about in 1876. The only battle more brutal than the nomination is the vote for the chair of the RNC. Interior Secretary Zachariah Chandler is attempting to win the position. Fellow Ohioan Edward Noyes and New Hampshire's own William Chandler are running as well. Will you do anything to tip the scales? I feel like my best bet here is to just let this play out and not get involved. The vote is not my battle to get involved with. We'll let the committee make their decision without any comments or remarks. Zachariah Chandler wins on the second ballot. Much of the work to court liberal Republicans has been washed away with this victory. So that's okay. Okay, Ohio, Pennsylvania have leaned more our direction. That's good. Connecticut's pretty close. New Jersey's basically dead even. So far, so good. But we know there are going to be those things that are going to come up in this election that are going to be radical shifts. Define yourself on corruption in the public sector. This issue, which has dragged down the reputation of the Grant administration due to what many see as rampant corruption. Grant was not himself involved in this corruption, but Grant tended to be naive and too trusting of people in his administration. And so there was a lot of corruption that went on under his administration. Any and all civil service reform passed should be thorough, radical, and complete. Our current system destroys the independence of the separate departments of government. The stalwarts must be appeased to some extent as we need their support. I will promise some of my cabinet positions shall be open, depending on the circumstances. I think I'll go that route. We don't want to go straight appeasement all the way down the line and just being like completely off on the topic, but we do need to throw a bone to the stalwarts here. A blatant appeal to stalwarts is not particularly a good idea. Even they were going to vote for you anyway. Okay, so we're appealing to a part of the party that's never going to go for the Democrats. So I get that. That makes sense. So little trip up there. The Hamburg massacre broke out yesterday. Not Hamburg, South Carolina. Hamburg's in Germany. This racially and politically motivated attack saw black Republicans attacked by white Democrats, resulting in 6 deaths. This was happening a lot in places like Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina. We can go strong on this one because we're not trying to win South Carolina anyway. I condemn these attacks and support a state investigation into how exactly something like this could happen. I send my condolence to all the family of the victims, including state legislator Simon Coker. Yeah, that's, I think, the best route. This balances condemning the attackers while also not bringing up Reconstruction. So we're solidifying things in some of these states that were kind of teetering early on. We do need to shift Indiana and New Jersey a little bit more. It's still 219-150. Okay, as expected, the Democratic Party has nominated Tilden, making this a fight over the patronage system. Governor Tilden prides himself on having taken down Boss Tweed. So that you have this thing called Tammany Hall in New York, which you kind of see the beginning stages of that in the movie Gangs of New York. It's this political machine in New York City that really has national influence, and this is a big issue that goes through and has its tentacles in all the elections around this time period. Let's tie Governor Tilden to the southern element in his party. Everyone knows the Democrats want to turn back the clock on Reconstruction. I don't think I want to tie him to the Irish and immigrant voters in New York. We could talk about his record. Says he stole hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stocks. I don't know if I want to go too heavy on Reconstruction. Let's tie him to Boss Tweed. Governor Tilden is seen by many Americans as a reformer, but tying him to corruption may be the right strategy. Okay, like I said, I don't want to hit Reconstruction too hard because that's a pretty divisive issue at this point, and I think we can win without it. Really got to move Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana our way. West Virginia is not looking good. I think we're going to need New York. They are supportive on tariffs. I think tariffs is a winning issue for us. So when tariffs come up, all the states that we're trying to win through the center of the country right here are all supportive on tariffs. So that'll be a good one. Financial panic of 1873. This was a big deal also. A lot of people lost their jobs. It was kind of a Great Depression before there was a Great Depression. It's still fresh in the minds of many citizens, and its effects are still being felt. How would your administration tackle the economic issues of this day? The gold standard is going to come up a lot more in the time to come. I could separate myself from the Grant administration a little bit here. We could talk about cracking down on strikes. I don't know if that's a winning strategy for us. Let's go back to the map on economics. Mostly leaning liberal. So what does that mean at this time is the question. I feel like I've been trying to think about this a little bit. Economically liberal in 1876 is probably more of a hands-off, not doing too much in terms of regulation. So I'm thinking maybe we're going to kind of not interfere too much. Even if you believe this, voters are looking for solutions to the problems. This answer leaves your surrogates totally confused. Okay, so they want us to interfere in the economy to do something, I guess. Incumbent Grant, who considered running for a third term, had wanted to convince the RNC to nominate Hamilton Fish as Secretary of State. Your commitment to serving one term was taken by him as a rebuke of him. Will you write to him in order to ensure you two are on decent standing? Grant's still really popular, even though his administration is not popular. I think I will say, hey, listen, I had no desire to offend. Some word gets around about this letter. Perhaps it was well worth it to avoid the internal bickering. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, we're going to need something to shake this race up. Things are not going great so far for us with all of this. What's your stance on Reconstruction? Now remember, the states we're looking at tend to be mixed on Reconstruction, so there's no real benefit to taking a side here. I do wish to extend federal funding for the Readjusters Party to better protect poor blacks. I think this is a good one, a good choice here to end the policy of Reconstruction in terms of occupation, things like that. But also saying, listen, we're going to support some of the things that are going on. Personally, if it were me, I would choose the last one. It needs preserved because there's a lot more work that needed done. But to get elected president, it wasn't going to happen. While it'll hurt you among radicals to abandon Reconstruction, it's good to remind people your party still has something to offer black voters in the North and to point out Democratic objections to these policies. All right. So what is this one here? Colorado, a new state, is going to hold legislative elections. Basically, any of these, Unfortunately, it appears Democrats have won control of the Colorado General Assembly. They will be sending Tilden electors. Yeah, Colorado's pretty solidly Tilden, it appears. I don't know. I can't remember who they went for historically. But now we're at 270 to 99. Not looking good at the moment. One way you can input the campaign is on the topic of finance. RNC has placed a lot of money in key states, but there's an apparent lack of funding by the committee in Indiana, and we need Indiana. Yes, we need Indiana big time. Indiana's of great importance. Yeah, let's definitely say that. Indiana Republicans are emboldened to ask for more and more funds. All right, hopefully we can start shifting Indiana our direction. One of Grant's biggest roles in the Reconstruction program has been to prosecute the KKK, which he actually created the Justice Department. He did a great job, Grant did, with basically destroying the Klan in the South. And it wouldn't really rise again until after the turn of the 20th century. Applaud his work on prosecuting the Klan. I don't think we're going to get enough black voters in the South. No. Yeah, I'm going to applaud his work on prosecuting them, but focus my energies on fighting corruption and reviving the economy. That's good. I think that's about the best choice we could make there. The uncovering of the whiskey ring last year is still in the minds of many Americans. Despite Grant seeing through over 200 indictments and over 100 convictions, many Americans associate his name and party with the scandal. I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. No, separate ourselves from the party on this issue. What was the president thinking, letting something this big fly under his nose? Yeah, we're going to say we're going to be on top of this. We're not going to let this kind of thing go. Well, any course of action would have hurt your candidacy. An entire repudiation of Grant's administration is probably not the best. All right. It's not going great at the moment. Oh, we got it up to 145, though. With corruption and civil service reform being the key issue of the day, there are many clamoring for a more pressing response from you. Well, you might write more about reform or let surrogates handle it. I think we need to be strong on this issue. We can sweep the Democratic argument from right under them, have my surrogates write letters pressing my desire for reform. Depends on the state. Letters to be published in Indiana should be different than a state like New York. I don't want people to think that I'm just pandering for votes by having a different message. Attack Tilden while keeping Republicans united. I do like that idea. The bloody shirt route certainly will help present a united front, but some such as Schurz, Carl Schurz, who was a general in the Civil War as well, he was a senator afterwards, believe you are not doing enough to press the reform issue. Okay, interesting. So they feel I'm not quite strong enough on this. New Jersey, we're not quite there yet, but Connecticut's in play, so that's good. One of Grant's biggest achievements in office was the creation of Yellowstone National Park. Will you discuss this in your campaign? We'll emphasize that. The concept of a national park is a newer one, but voters seem interested. Yeah. Grant's record on foreign affairs has been highly successful. In particular, the Treaty of Washington was signed as a new method of resolving international disputes. How will you address this treaty in your campaign? Yeah, so we can distance ourselves from the corruption of Grant's administration, which is largely focused on internal affairs, while also highlighting what he did right. The Alabama claim, so the CSS Alabama was a Confederate ship that was built in England, I believe, and so there was a lot of push after the Civil War for the British government to pay reparations to the United States for that ship and the damage that it caused to American shipping. Emphasize it heavily. I don't know if, well, we can go after the Alabama claims because we're not trying to pander to the South anyway. But it's true that voters aren't really heavily focused on foreign affairs right now. So I think we'll kind of say, yeah, we'll discuss the success, but most voters aren't concerned with foreign policy. No harm, no foul. Foreign affairs aren't a particularly important issue this election, as most concerns are domestic, but ensuring voters you'll continue Grant's pragmatic policy is a smart move. Okay, cool. So, gosh, Indiana's still 6 points, though. We're not looking great in any of these places at the moment. Another one of the president's successes involved his good treatment of the Jewish community. So, one of the black marks on Grant early in his public life was during the American Civil War, he actually signed off on an order that basically expelled Jews within the department that he was in charge of. And there may have been some pressure from his father and all of that, and he did back off of it eventually. It was kind of thrown out, and then he acknowledged he was wrong on that issue. So he did try to make up for that during his presidency. We already have the Jewish vote in our corner. There's no need to make extra mention of this. Yeah, I think we'll go there. While you do, of course, have the Jewish vote secured, affirming your support wouldn't have hurt. Yeah, well. February of 76, Grant's Secretary of War, William Belknap, was impeached by the House for corruption in the Trader Post scandal, but then acquitted by the Senate as Belknap resigned. As corruption is a major issue, are there any thoughts on this event? Belknap had resigned from office before the trial. I don't believe the Senate trial should have gone on. We could go hardcore on this one and say he should be serving time in prison. This is a good anti-corruption answer that will motivate voters. However, as there are some hardcore Republicans who still like Grant, yeah, but the hardcore Republicans aren't going to vote for Tilden anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. But, man, we are just not swinging these states that we need. Last year, a major civil rights law was passed by Republican Congress and signed into law by President Grant. Did you support this bill? Yes. Definitely applaud the president's choice here. The North has gotten a bit weary of repeated passage of civil rights bills. Just can't make the right choice no matter what I do. Can't seem to get closer than 155. A moralistic crackdown on pornography, abortion, and polygamy. Bet you didn't know those were issues in 1876. To some success. Did you support the president's actions, and how will you address the issue of morality in your administration? I don't think this is a big issue for the campaign, though. Off the record, I'm not so sure about these, but our base supports them. Yeah, that's not a big issue. No harm, no foul. Despite some criticisms over wars with the natives, remember this is 1876, this is the year of the Great Sioux War, this is the year of Custer's last stand, this is definitely on the minds of voters. Grant has overseen this, but the war's over by the time of the election, really. Emphasize it greatly. This has its supporters and detractors, so some believe in Grant has not gone far enough. Now we're back to 129. I can't seem to swing the states that I need. Defeat of Tilden in New York, yeah, it's... Yeah, I'm not going to get too heavy into that. Luckily for you, Republicans have nominated former Governor and Senator Edwin Morgan, who appears to have been endorsed by the Liberal Republican Convention as well. President Grant was remarkably supportive of women's rights, even while other Republicans are more cautious on the matter. Oh boy. I'm not going to talk about this issue too much. No harm, no foul. I don't think we're going to swing Indiana. Tensions have risen in the South. How will you speak about these rising tensions? We must speak out against violence no matter who causes it or what, on what matter. All right, I think we'll go there. This answer balances enforcing the new laws while also avoiding speaking too harshly against the South. We weren't going to win the South anyway. Oh, it's so close. It's all so close in the North. It's like 1 point. And if we win Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and New Hampshire, we win the election. But all of those states are like razor thin. Like one different decision could have swung this for me. I just don't know if we've got it. All right, we're going to move on from Reconstruction. Some advisors feel utterly betrayed. Others believe Tilden ending Reconstruction was the worst option. Regardless, emotions are high right now, so you better buckle up. I think it's going to be a narrow loss. We'll know pretty early when we start seeing states like Connecticut, New Jersey, New Hampshire coming in. Yeah, no surprises so far. I think we're going to lose, though. It's going to wait until the last minute to tell us about all those states that we're thinking about that we need. We lost Indiana. There's no chance now. Yeah, it was 51-48 in Indiana. There's not a path. All the southern states are coming in first. All the ones that we aren't going to win. Yeah, there's no surprises. We know what we need to do to win it, and I might go back through just on my own to do it. Yeah. Gosh. Did I lose Ohio? I lost Ohio. 50.5-49. Wow, I got destroyed in that election. All right. I'm going to play it again. I'm just going to kind of make the better choices, and we'll see how it turns out. So I just want to show you how things stand this time around. I've gone through so far 10 of the questions. We managed to swing Colorado, and I've got much more solid looking map for us already in all of these places. Right now we are up 187-182, just with a couple of choices that I made differently. So here's where we stand now at question 19. You can see that a lot of those states that we struggled with last time are more solidly in my camp. We probably could use swinging Nevada our way. Indiana still just a point separating, but we're actually pretty close in New York too. But still a few things that we need to do to make sure that we win this. All right, so I made it back to question 25. There were a few different questions, but for the most part, it was the same ones. We just made better choices. I really only changed my answer on maybe 5 of the 25. Let's see how we do this time around. I think I've done enough to win it this time, but then again, some of the states I thought I won last time, I ended up losing, so polling is not always accurate, as we know. But so far, Vermont was the first state last time, and we knew we weren't going to win these southern states, so everything's going exactly the same way it did last time. We need to start seeing some changes. So far, just 3 states have come through. There's the rest of the South. No surprises. Everything has gone exactly according to plan so far. Indiana, I wasn't expecting to win, but I don't think I need it this time. We got Colorado. I think as long as I solidly win all the other states, we're good. We got Ohio this time, so that's a change. There's Illinois. There's the central states, all pretty solid. There's Michigan, Pennsylvania, Iowa, It's going to be close. Tilden can't win anymore. No, Tilden's won. He's got it still. Because he got New Jersey, he got Indiana. So it's still a win for Tilden. Oh, my gosh. Wow. Brutal. That time it was 206 to 163. So even though the polling, the estimate that time had me ahead, I still lost. So let me know your thoughts. How did you win it if you played it? I'll put the link down in the description so you can play this for yourself. Figure out your strategy for winning this election. And if there's another election you'd like to see me do that I haven't already done, check out the playlist. Let me know and we'll do it again sometime. Thanks for watching.